and welcome to today's webinar, CDP Supply Chain Report Launch, Reducing Risk, Driving Business Value. This session in the series today. Thank you for joining us. Tudor is delighted to have with us today L'Oreal, Bank of America, CDP, FirstCarbon Solutions, and Accenture with us. Now, to actually begin the session, I'd like to give you technical instructions for the webinar. If you have problems with technology or audio, please use the chat box on the right side of the screen to send a message. Select the drop-down menu, send a message, and then back to you. Ask questions throughout the presentation. We'll hold a session at the end of the webinar. Your question, type in the Q&A box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, and then send. If you'd like to connect through your phone, please use the chat box to contact me for details. Out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and hand it now over to our speakers. Dexter, are you there?
Thank you. My name is Dexter Galvin, and I'm the head of CDP Supply Chain at the Carbon Disclosure Project. This is the first in a series of 3 webinars hosted by 2 Degrees, launching the public supply chain report this year. We received considerable media coverage from the report launch, which happened on the 22nd. One of the highlights of the media coverage this year has been from the Guardian newspaper in the UK, where Joe Confino just described the CDP Supply Chain program as like Alcoholics Anonymous, because we have a situation where our member companies have identified that they have a problem, asking to solve the problem over a number of stages, similar to the AA's 12-step plan. So we did that bit of coverage, but the report is available on our website on www.cdproject.net. Today we have a great agenda for you. We have our report writer, Accenture, who's been a great partner for the past 2 years of CDP Supply Chain, and have put together this fantastic report, Reducing Risk and Driving Business Value. We have our scoring partners, FirstCarbon Solutions, who have been doing great work on scoring all suppliers in CDP Supply Chain on disclosure and performance. And to also have 2 of our member companies on this call today. We have L'Oreal and Bank of America. At the session today, we'll have a few moments for questions, so please do ensure that you send the questions through via the chat function, as Vanessa mentioned. Just a bit of background. CDP was founded over a decade ago as the Carbon Disclosure Project to accelerate solutions to climate change by putting relevant data as part of business, policy, assessment decisions. We've had some considerable success since then. We now represent 655 institutional signatory investors who send a request for carbon and climate change data through our system to the world's largest listed companies. In 2007, Walmart came to us and said that they had such a positive experience responding to investor requests that they would like to ask their suppliers to respond to the CDP request. And that was the start of the supply chain program. And 54 member companies in the supply chain program for 2012 who sent a request to over 6,000 of their suppliers. The figure for members is growing every year, and we expect a significant increase in the number of members from 2012 to 2013. If any of you are interested in pursuing membership of CDP Supply Chain to ask your own suppliers for this sort of information, please don't hesitate to contact us. The response rate of 2,400 suppliers this year has been positive. We expect a continued increase in the growth of suppliers that are responding to CDP Supply Chain over the years as the ambition of our member companies increases. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleagues from Accenture, Aditya Sharma, who has been leading the team on the report writing for the year. So, Aditya, are you to go your presentation?
Yeah, and thank you, Dexter, for that introduction. We talk about the CDP supply chain report and reducing risk and driving business value. Lately, we suggested a sustainable supply chain framework to the business case across the 4 dimensions: mitigating risk, reducing costs, enhancing brand, and increasing revenue. This data was particularly insightful as we saw companies making this case and realizing not only tangible but also intangible benefits. We will talk about risk identification is evolving, and I think business continuity risk realignment is driving investment in efficiency and emission reduction initiatives. To significant tangible benefits corroborating the business case. Finally, the real leaders are also gaining competitive advantage such as brand enhancement and increased value from the business model. For example, companies moving from products to services. Data continues to highlight a performance gap between members and suppliers, presenting a risk, but also an opportunity for collaboration to drive benefits across the supply chain. Finally, in the report also talks about an integrated approach on how to capitalize the business case, I think business value, covering the aspects of data, process, and governance. Risk management is inherent to the supply chain, along with cost reduction and value creation. Supply chain sustainability has been viewed as a cost driven by social responsibility. One of the fundamental reasons for this is are becoming more clearer, and impacts such as Sandy are becoming are being realized. Certain respondents identified a current or future climate change risk with a potential to significantly impact businesses or revenue. Extra events could have significant business impact in forms of increased costs and reduced capacity. We noted that there is a strong correlation between risk identification and outcomes. Identification is setting the foundation for not only setting higher emission targets, but actually achieving tangible benefits such as emission reduction and monetary savings. One point is that policy alone is not driving change, but whether it is business continuity risk. To look to the future, this should be the importance of protecting against risk and driving value for the business. This result indicates that physical risks such as drought, floods, hurricane, and water shortage are major drivers for investment, not just regulation. A clear indicator of how organizations are preparing to protect, ensure themselves against these inequalities. The number of respondents investing in emission reduction initiatives, 7% say they feel climate change presents a physical risk to their operations, as to just 13% want by regulation as a sole driver for risk. To talk about the World Bank, where they actually talked about economic impact of the 2011 flood to be in the tune of $45 billion, and the recent Sandy event, which I was in New York, so I can attest to that. Estimated at almost $50 billion, and these are becoming real. I just realized that I was supposed to navigate the slides. This is a slide where we talk about how investing is driving and as opposed to not investing, how companies are going about identifying risk. We talk about how investments are making a difference, both in terms of cost and emission reduction. Realizing the business value, companies are investing and realizing benefits such as monetary savings. what you're seeing is a clear trend that investment in energy efficiency, transportation are leading the pack. Men also started undertaking long-term activities, such as low-carbon installations with a low payback period. Important observation was that the men have doubled in investment and monetary savings, corroborating the business case. Present supply yet to capitalize on the opportunity, and as much as the same business benefits. Just to give some examples, Eaton, the diversified power management company, has engaged in civil emission reduction activities. These will eliminate about 85,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year, and invested approximately 70 million in capital costs for upgrades and project annual energy savings. And projected that they would save on an annual basis around 6 million, meaning the company could receive the payback on its investment in less than 3 years. So it were citing optimization as key action plans, key recovery, etc. I think the key point is very well summarized by the CFO of Diageo. Effective management is about making choices that support the efficient growth of the businesses on term. Inefficient and even irresponsible because only short-term payback, making investment decisions. Leaders are also realizing additional business value, additive advantage from brand improvement, innovative revenue streams. Considering brand enhancement, what are they focusing on? They're getting improved reputation, they're on getting improved brand value, and this clear focus on understanding customer behaviors and trends. On it, as they focus on revenue increase, there's been quite a bit of innovation in terms of product and services, dedicated services, and achieving creating a market for premium price opportunities. Just a few new services. Years have moved from only product innovation, but also creating new services on its added value through sustainability initiatives, which is consistency, energy management, and development of products and value chain using eco-efficiency and lifecycle analysis. I developed a new product called Green Polythene, based on its customers in low carbon raw material, and also based on the company's experience in manufacturing with the use of ethanol. This product is less expensive biopolymer, but it is commanding a price premium over conventional polythene made by fossil fuels. Pricing was defined based on the investment there in the new technology and lower scale compared to conventional polyethylene facilities. Just been focusing on changing the behavior. More than 65% of labor greenhouse gas footprint is on account of fewer uses of this product. A lot of research is done in this area to modify consumer behavior. Laundry and personal care categories. Interpretation and brand value. The television giant BT has some important benefits on its brand based on its program to reduce emissions and mitigate environmental impacts. So, uptake in terms of companies requesting companies' credential on corporate responsibility and sustainability. In 2012, they had 2.1 billion pounds in bids as compared to the 2.1 billion bids in 2011. Also presenting an opportunity because of performance gap between members and suppliers. Over 90% members have identified risk, and this is reflected in the 92% of have set up emission reduction targets, and 69% of them are invested. And only 45% suppliers have identified physical risk, and reflected in only 38% of them setting emission reduction targets and only 27% of them investors. I think the CDP scores also represent this. The average CDP disclosure score for 2012 was 82, and companies with suppliers were only 48. While average performance band for members was B, as opposed to D for suppliers. Financial and environmental incentives both for members and suppliers to collaborate and close this gap. One is that we see as a catalyst is communication versus performance. We talked about the need for companies to build upon the communication to deliver tangible performance. This indicates that companies with a well-established communication strategy who are reporting their for 2 years, who were first year communicated last year, have seen an improved visualization over the last year. This in terms of opportunity, that this is only 29% suppliers reported a saving of $13.7 billion. If all the suppliers reporting savings, there is a significant potential for us to work in collaboration with members and suppliers. So the business case, how are companies going about that? We talked about a three-pronged approach around data, process, and governance. When you're considering data, you cannot improve what you cannot measure. All the forward momentum, data remains an often elusive piece of the puzzle. All that is being collected through scope questionnaires and audits. Not many companies are analyzing it and using the results to drive sustainability agenda. I mean, more often than not, data ends up being just data and not information that can actually be used for decision making. Areas where companies are now focusing on is pattern recognition as well, and analytics. Organizations could use quantitative techniques and analytics to assess costs associated with climate change. And that's the area that companies are focusing on. Another is collaboration in reporting and sharing of sustainability-related information across the supply chain. CDP working with other organizations, third ecovators to encourage the use of CDP data and reduce duplicate results. One supplier could receive 28 requests from customers through CDP Supply Chain. Just imagine if they had to respond to these 20 requests individually. In terms of process, organizations need to weave in sustainability into their day-to-day operating procedures. Or they have to identify with the business critical processes the second sustainability impact to start the change. The change is more likely to provide sustainable benefits and provide a clear roadmap for companies to move from level of maturity to next. For example, with the procure process and maturity journey could start from with the simple foundation of putting a given policy in place and then slowly evolving to suppliers and contractual obligations. For example, the Imperial Tobacco has integrated price increase for its suppliers to the sustainability footprint. As asked for a price increase due to energy costs, Imperial Tobacco first turns to their CDP reporting history. They are reporting on energy and risk management before granting the increase unless there are exceptional circumstances. The piece of the puzzle is governance. Last we talked about how number of invites were resulting in probability of reporting. More than twice corresponded to 85% chance of suppliers reporting. Highlight companies identifying this as a customer demand and a business necessity. We explored the number of invites to other discernible changes. Thus, 93% suppliers getting more than 3 invites had an integrated strategy, as opposed to only 57% who received 1 invite. Or 54% suppliers getting more than 3 invites reported monetary savings, as opposed to only 25 who had received 1. Engagement is key. suppliers is a win-win situation for both suppliers and members. And if innovation continues to play an increasingly important role, it will be critical to collaborate with suppliers to innovate and explore new opportunities from critical or closed-loop supply chain systems. Such indicates that suppliers are reaching out by members countries performing significantly better than those who are not. A strong correlation between top management sponsorship and sustainability performance. Only 4% suppliers reported board oversight in contrast to 81% members. Therefore, members with their suppliers, they could encourage their suppliers to have top-level management on this. A cross-collaboration approach is required. And the responsibility of driving sustainability needs to be on just at the payment function. And we're seeing an upward trend in that as well. That's stuff. And I think we'll take questions on the end.
Adi, thank you. Yes, we will take questions at the end of the session. So please do send them in via the chat function. So thank you very much, Aditya. And we're just going to hand over now to FirstCarbon Solutions and Chet Chaffee. FirstCarbon Solutions have been our scoring partner for the past 2 years and have been doing a huge amount of work for us on scoring all of the supplier responses. So it's over to you.
Thank you, and welcome everybody, and thank you for joining the CDP webinar. Let's start by introducing our company. I work for FirstCarbon Solutions. We are a member of the ADEC group, with over 14 years of experience in reducing costs and optimizing resource use and driving efficiencies. Our sustainability experts all have at least 20 years of experience on average, delivering services, software, and data management, data processing. In the last 2 years, we have scored over 3,500 supply chain questionnaires as the exclusive scoring partner to the Disclosure Project. And there we also added several hundred investor questionnaires for the DACH and Nordic regions. So I'll tell you a little bit about scoring. Supply chain questionnaires are scored, and all the disclosures that came in for 2012 were scored by FirstCarbon Solutions, with the exception of a few. Originated as developed for investors as a metric to evaluate a company's ability to manage carbon, and this was since 2008. The methodology is published on the CDP website and available prior to the reporting cycle, and it's a very important document for people to read and follow along, as it provides very specific guidance on how you want to fill out your questionnaire. The purpose of the scoring methodology, as you can see on the slide, is to help suppliers and procurers benchmark their suppliers and highlight areas for improvement. The quote that they're from Group Steria, I think, provides the impetus that a lot of companies have, and that is they want to manage their position and their public persona with regard to climate change. So here they note clearly that that's important to them, and they're moving forward to doing that, and they use the CDP process to help them along. And it's important for participants in the program to know is that the information you submit to CDP and that goes out from CDP to the world is very highly valued. In the 2012 Rate the Raters, polled globe, and what you see here is a chart showing that CDP is the most trusted index or source of data on carbon management and carbon disclosure. So as you participate, a lot of people take a good look at CDP information. It's used widely, and therefore you want to do the best job you can in terms of answering your questionnaires and achieving the best scores you can, not only just for your customers, but also for your shareholders, your employees, and the global citizenry. So put care on how you're filling out the questionnaire. And let me go through a few points about that for you. Your questionnaire scores are reported in two categories. There's a disclosure score that talks about the completeness, quality, and transparency of your information. And there is a performance band score, and that specifically is about your performance on carbon management, carbon mitigation. Both scoring categories are broken down into several subcategories, and you receive average scores in each of those categories. So it's important to remember you're not only filling out information to tell people how you're doing, but data that you submit is also used to judge your performance in terms of how well you're managing carbon and reducing your carbon exposure year on year. Trend in general for 2012 is shown in this slide. You can see that when you're looking at average scores across the categories and across the supply chain participants, certain categories are always scoring higher than others. On average, the governance and strategy category, emissions reporting, and emissions management are where companies score highest under disclosure. Where the average is lowest on disclosure is on risks, opportunities, and stakeholder engagement verification. The performance band scores, you see a similar pattern. On average, do a pretty good job in questions about governance and strategy, and struggle with questions about emissions performance and stakeholder engagement and verification. Now, let's explain that on disclosure, risk opportunities are pretty straightforward, but the scores are average lower because there's a lot more specific information requested under those questions that companies often overlook or don't provide answers to. So pay particular attention to those. Under stakeholder engagement and verification, oftentimes the score is lower because not as many companies in the supply chain program have yet to have third-party verification on their GHG inventories. What you just heard from the report, and that is that companies on the investor side, on average, score high on these things. They've been participating longer in the program, and many of them have third-party verification for their Scope 1 and Scope 2, and many are starting to have verification for their Scope 3 emissions. Performance, the same is true. Verification and stakeholder engagement, the points on performance, again, are attributed to that third-party verification. And performance, usually the struggle is that we've got a lot of first-time participants in the supply chain program, and so a higher percentage of companies in the supply chain program have not yet set targets and been able to report year-on-year reductions. But we expect to see that average go up as the years go, because more and more companies will be doing that. But as mentioned, the expectation is that the supply chain program will also be growing quite rapidly over the next few years, gaining a lot more participants. And as first-time participants, again, there will be many companies that have yet to set targets and show year-on-year reductions. Let me switch now to how can you do better? What do you need to pay attention to as suppliers to improve your scoring year-on-year? Complete all sections of all questions. Don't leave blanks. Cut and paste if necessary. Even if a question seems like it's a duplicate, don't leave it blank, assuming that an answer to some other question is good enough. Copy and paste. Provide attachments where they're requested, and if you have to attach the same document multiple times. Don't use links. Examples where it's appropriate. Even if you have something going on that might be for a specific division or one aspect of a company, provide that example. Don't just leave it blank just because it's not corporate-wide. Never refer one question back to another or forward to another. Again, copy and paste. If you see question 2.3 when you're on question 4.2, it doesn't achieve a score. You must put an answer in there for to be awarded. Remember, not just quantitative questions, but all the qualitative questions have a variety of criteria. Out nicely in the guidance documents on methodology and scoring. So if you're answering no to a leading question, for example, you have to explain why. Provide some basis for your answer. Always provide as much detail as possible. As the first bullet point says, be careful to address all points listed, and if possible, use headings to reference the various points. It just facilitates the scoring of your questionnaire. From pointing to you of various tips on how to do a better job filling out your questionnaire, the other thing you should know is there are a variety of resources available to you as suppliers that you should pay attention to and take advantage of to help you through the questionnaire process and to improve your scores. What is available to you? Well, every year, supply chain members receive their scores back from CDP, and they're offered a free report from FirstCarbon Solutions if they sign up for a free briefing call. As the call is free, you can request them, they get scored, they take about a half an hour, and they provide you with a variety of information about your score, how you compare to others in your industry, how you compare to the program overall, what's the distribution of scores overall in the program, how do you do in each of the subcategories within disclosure and within performance, and how does your score in each of those categories, again, compare to the overall average, the industry average, sector average, or region average. So it gives you a variety of information on how well you're doing, so you can benchmark your own performance against others and some determinations about how you'd like to work to improve your scores for the following year. In the report are pieces of information about key indicators, those indicators that people either struggle with or many companies answer positively to. And we use statistics on that to let you know that you should look for those same key indicators and make sure that you're doing equally as good a job answering them as the other companies. You can create in webinars such as this one. CDP sponsors a lot of webinars, again, free of charge for suppliers and investors to participate in and learn about what's going on in the program and ask questions and get answers. Some members put on their own webinar. If a customer of yours is requesting you to participate in offering a free webinar, it's instructive to take that. There's a lot of good information and it will help you out in filling out your questionnaire. Briefing calls that we provide, you not get to hear all the information that I just discussed, but there is a Q&A session where you can ask questions about specifics, and we will do our best to answer those in as much detail as we can to give you some sense of why things got scored the way they did and how you can improve. Not least, of course, there are a variety of consulting services out there available to you, even through FirstCarbon Solutions, and as the exclusive scoring partner for the supply chain program, we have a variety of services available to people and significant expertise in how questionnaires should be filled out and how scores are achieved. So we're happy to talk to you about anything we can do to help you. I'll end by saying that all of these things are available to you, and we hope that you take advantage of all of them as you are working to fill out your questionnaires. We know it's a bit of a process to go through it, and we're here to help as much as we can. And I'll end with the quote here that was given by Laura Hawes from American Licorice when we spoke with her last year and gave her her free briefing call. She said, trying to analyze our CDP feedback on our own, we decided to talk to FirstCarbon Solutions for additional insights. The information FirstCarbon Solutions provided in this consultation was invaluable and gave me good direction and ideas on what American Licorice needs to work on this year. Indeed, we've spoken to Laurel on a number of occasions since that briefing call, trying to help her through some of the management aspects that she's working on in terms of improving the climate management within her company. Dexter, I'll hand it back to you and thank everybody for attending the webinar.
Thanks, Chet. I'm looking forward to seeing more and more suppliers taking you up on that offer of free feedback call. I think it's suppliers that we've had involved in the program over the years, they found the feedback on their scores very useful, and we've already seen a few questions come through from suppliers around how to get their feedback calls set up. So thank you very much, Chet, and now I'm delighted to introduce one of our member companies. We have Inken Dichow from one of our leading member companies, L'Oréal, who's going to talk about their approach, and I've been working very closely with and the team at L'Oréal for the past number of years, so I know that they're very dedicated to this work and have really achieved a lot in their organization. So Inken, I'll hand over to you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much to the CDP to offer the opportunity again to share some of our working on the CDP with you. And I'm very pleased to see that there's so many participants. I hope there's maybe some of our suppliers, they will see that we use the data that they send us and the information that they share. First, I would like to check if everybody can hear me right, because I have seen that there were some audio problems.
Perfectly, Inken.
Okay, perfect. Who's speaking the slide, Dexter?
Yeah, you should have.
Okay. Perfect. So this slide is just to re-explain the context of our industry to you. It presents the life cycle analysis of our products. So the numbers that you see on the different parts of the life cycle indicate the CO2 emissions. So we did this analysis on representative number of products that we produce. So makeup, creams, shampoos, shower gels, etc. So it's quite representative. And what you see there is that nearly 30% of the CO2 emissions of our products happen at the supplier places. There's 5% in our own premises, so on our production sites, 7% in distribution centers and transport. There's near 60% that happens at the consumer's place, mainly because of the hot shower that people take to rinse their hair, and 10% for the end of life. So we have started in 2009 with a public commitment to reduce our own footprint, not only CO2 emissions, but also water consumption and waste. And you see the numbers that we have achieved by the end of December. So we had minus 38% of CO2 emissions for manufacturing and distribution centers. We had minus 23 for water, and we're a little bit struggling for waste, so we're only at minus 20. But I wanted to show that to you because we decided really to do the job first in-house, and I think that was a good decision because it shows that it is possible. And what we are with our suppliers when we encourage them to report to the CDP and to fix themselves targets, is those minus 38% that we achieved in our production site. And so all those projects have a payback. So it is a business-linked opportunity. It's not only good for the environment, but also good for our business. We also find that having the job in-house, shows that it is possible, and that gives us a sort of credibility also to talk to our suppliers. But then we see the life cycle. Of course, it shows that we can't stop there. So it was a good start to fix our own objectives, but we want now to choose suppliers to follow us in the same direction. Important to say also that a lot of our suppliers already have targets and already follow the same policy to reduce environmental footprint. Now, a little bit of the history. We joined the CDP Supply Chain in 2009, and we started with our major suppliers for packaging and for raw materials. For 3 years, we followed the increased slightly the number of suppliers that we invited. Now, in 2011, we decided that we really wanted to reinforce our policy in terms of environmental sustainability and partnership with our suppliers. And we decided to change our organization, able to increase the number of suppliers that we invite. So in 2011, we started to train our buyers to become sort of ambassadors for the CDP supply chain. And without asking them to become an expert in terms of climate change, we asked them to communicate to the suppliers, to encourage them to report on the CDP, and, somehow to start a discussion with them, and to call the environmental experts if necessary. So we trained over 100 buyers in 4 geographical zones in the end of 2011 and beginning of 2012. And that's quite a difference, because if it's the person who allocates the market to the supplier who's also talking about climate change, and that is silly and shows that there is a link between business and between emissions and environmental footprint. So that's quite a success, and the new organization allowed us to triple the number of suppliers that we invited. So last year We added 156 suppliers from 4 geographical zones in 5 different sourcing categories to join the CDP and to report their policy and their emissions on this platform. A really good response rate, and that was thanks to the great work of the buying teams and the involvement. 133 of our suppliers answered. Now, we didn't want to stop. We just didn't want to stop just say good they report. We want to use the data as well. So what we did in the last month to analyze the responses. I only gave one slide here because we are limited in time to show the analysis that we do category per category. So here we show our buying teams, our sourcing teams, the scores, the average scores of their suppliers in their category. So you see, for example, on the left side, the average score for the CDP Supply Chain. You see the average score of our suppliers. And then category per category, you see the average scores in terms of disclosure and also in terms of performance. You see that varies a lot from category to category. We already find with the discussions that we have with the sourcing teams that there's a healthy and virtuous competition starting. So some of the teams already decided that they wanted to get more involved to increase the scores of their suppliers. And we put L'Oreal score in, which again gives us credibility to invite suppliers and to encourage them year by year to increase their policy and to become to increase the data that they have and to encourage to fix targets, to encourage to measure CO2 emissions, to encourage to meet us, to discuss, okay, what kind of initiatives are possible, what is L'Oreal doing to reduce CO2 emissions, what can they do. So really we get more and more into the material. I'm quite pleased to share with you the scorecard that we have developed, co-developed with the CDP. In fact, we had a first version last year that was quite manual, so there was a lot of copy and paste that we had to do to fill it out. And this year, the X team did such a wonderful job and organized the scorecard. So in fact, if I understood it right, they programmed a transfer from the information from the SAP tool, from the CDP Analytics, to move to the scorecard. So it was really planned for us. We received those already done scorecards for our suppliers, and we could really concentrate on the analysis of the data. So this is a support that we use to communicate with our suppliers, which is really a summary of the responses that they give. So find the disclosure scores, we find some data that we found important. And it's about this tool that our buying teams start discussion, and if we find it useful and necessary, then we organize meetings that are more specific, where we invite our environmental experts and the experts from the supplier to look at any collaborative opportunities and what can we share. To summarize our program for the year, we are about to share now the analysis that we did for the different categories with our sourcing teams. They will go over. So historically, L'Oreal organizes business reviews with suppliers in January, February, March. So the messages that they will pass over to our suppliers is, first of all, a big thank for participation in 2012, and then an encouragement to go further to reach the emissions and to targets, because at the end of the day, what really counts for us is that we manage together with our suppliers to reduce our environmental footprint. We all want to increase, again, the number of suppliers that we invited in 2013, and then I'm quite pleased to announce that we have decided also to join CDP Supply Chain Water. So we are in big discussion at the moment who are the suppliers that we want to invite to this pilot. Thank you very much again for this opportunity, and I hope there's some questions that I can answer to.
Thank you much, Inken. And we have a few moments for questions at the end. Very impressed by the work that you guys have done at L'Oréal with this scorecard approach, and I know that your buying team is actually using the data, which is fantastic. So I'm going to hand over now to another one of our leading member companies, so it's Bank of America. So I have Keegan Lovely here from London, so it's bright and early in London. So Keegan, I'm going to hand over to you now.
Thank you much, Dexter. Thank you, and Ken, really enjoyed that. It's good to hear you speak again, and thank you very much, everybody on the line. I do appreciate your time. Sorry, but could you just pop? I've just got a holding slide. I don't have a full-blown deck, but yeah, talking about the cost and risk reduction from a Bank of America perspective. Just very briefly, as Dexter said, would like to see us as a leading member. We've been involved with CDP and CDP Supply Chain from the beginning, looking at and addressing climate and environmental issues is very important to us, and we want to make a substantive impact to that. And we do that through awareness first and foremost, because that's where we can have the most impact. Then through operations, where we can have a big impact, and then with stakeholder engagements, including supply, employee, and others. And then that's all underpinned by a governance structure. But the operation side is really important because, and I'd like to talk very briefly on ourselves to give it an idea of the costs and the risk reduction that's happened for us, and then also about how we're working with our suppliers to help improve their cost and risk profile, which ultimately will help us as well. But we've been monitoring and reporting our carbon footprint for a number of years now. We had a target from back in 2004, back in 2007, and reduced our emissions quite significantly, and we've got ongoing targets to 2015. But if you look at what we've done and the impact of setting a target and then having to actually deliver on that, we've invested $150 million over the last number of years, and that already returned nearly $200 million in savings and continues to deliver over $30 million a year in savings for ourselves. That's in energy efficiency activities and a wide range of investments. I mean, that's a significant return on investment that by the time we reach our emissions reduction goal in 2015, which will be around about 30% absolute reduction, you look at $100 a year in electricity savings, because as globally we spend around $1 million a day on electricity. So that's essential. Then in terms of working with stakeholders internally and our suppliers, we've got volatility of prices. Try to use our peak demand, looking at ways we can do that, whether it's through working with suppliers and fuel cells, etc. We can actually reduce our exposure not only to price but to actually supply spikes and the impacts that can have. And there's a whole range of other risks that one can take into account as well. Engaging with the supply chain is a key component, because it's one, how to help our suppliers thing in terms of making a positive and substantial change to the issues facing the global economy as a whole. Two, it is reducing our Scope 3 footprint, because although it has yet have a full Scope 3 goal, we do have aspirations around that space. But also we've got very strong Scope 1 and 2 goals, and with our suppliers, it helps us reduce those. So in a couple of ways that we're actually working with our supply chain, using the CDP data is one, the engaging and training the management team is important, because it's got to be part of how they're looking at evaluating their supplier base on a business as usual basis. But we find some of our others are initially expensive and may not necessarily have the time, the resource, the capacity to evolve. And I suppose the will's there, but it might be difficult to actually execute on that. And we've actually got got a program to address that, where we're actually in carbon reduction grants, where we're working with vendors, because a number of vendors might actually have been, but they don't actually have targets yet. So looking at the vendors who've funded for a couple of years, still don't have targets, and then actually engage them as to, well, you have a target, what we could get you to get a target, and if necessary, we can work with them to partner and provide a grant, which will, if they pay for some consultancy services to work out the implications and how to actually go about doing that. So identified some prime candidates. We've only issued one as yet, but it's definitely helping address these issues, and on a couple of occasions, it's through engagement, we've actually been able to work with to put it in place without necessarily giving a grant, because it's more understanding of what the issues are and what the implications are. And similar to the scorecards, we're working with our vendor managers to what we call a climate action snapshot, which is effectively promoting dialogue between the vendors and the vendor managers, summarising the performance, and it's looking at where their performance is, why it's important, and how they can keep. And interestingly, when we start looking at the level down, so you've got a snapshot or a scorecard of performance as a company, but is then linking it back to how does that help and reduce the vendor's cost and risk, rather than just being an imposition, and how does that help me as a client, how to help reduce my cost and risk and achieve my goals, and that discussion, I think often you'll see the discussions start on some of these factors, but then can quickly become a collaborative discussion on where joint ambitions can be achieved, whether it's reporting, whether it's carbon reduction, etc. Pause there, and because I know we're coming up against time, but if there's any questions, I can happily.
Thank you. It's a great collaborative approach that you've got with your suppliers. So thank you very much for your insight there. New questions that have come in via the chat function. So if we could maybe allow all panelists to respond to these. I have the first question, which has come through for Aditya, and around the governance point. So just bear with me a moment and I will pull that up. Governance change management, you mentioned that it is a win-win for all. I thought so too, but I'm curious to know why, as evidenced by this report, there appears to be such a gulf between procurers and suppliers in monetizing the benefits.
So repeat the first bit of that question again.
Yeah, it was Aditya. It was under governance change management. You meant that it's a win-win for all. I thought so too, but I'm curious to know why, as evidenced by this report, there appears to be such a gulf between procurers and suppliers in monetizing the benefits. So to Aditya.
I've got points on after Aditya.
Great. Aditya? Well, perhaps Aditya seems to be having audio trouble at the moment, so perhaps you could come in on that point.
From my perspective, and I think generally the governance is key, and it makes sense. If you've got your activities underpinned by a robust governance structure with executive level oversight and the processes below that to make it happen, it just makes things easier and a lot more impactful to affect change and drive strategy and direction of what you are doing. I think it's iterative. It's not something that is a final goal or a final position. Our governance structure now is substantially better than it was. Is it where I would like it to be? No, I think it will continue to evolve over time. But it's daunting, particularly when one is replying, when one is looking at the leaders in this space, go from A to Z immediately, and I think it does need to be recognised that it's a journey, and I think sometimes there might be it's resources, understanding executive buy-in, what's needed, what's going to impact on my business, and I think an appreciation that it's okay to go from A to B or A to C rather than trying to get straight to Z in one step, and that's a role that we all play together in addressing that. But it's something you will see evolve over time as people respond more and develop that organizational maturity and capacity.
I agree with Kagan. The way we look at, and by the way, this is another thing, I was muted earlier, I apologize. We see change management as a vehicle to close the gap. We are seeing companies that are getting the right sponsorship, the right integrated strategy, education in place, which are components of change management, achieve better results. And, we have quite a bit of statistical data to back that up. So, Kagan, you're on the money on that.
Thank you, Kagan and Aditya. I have a question for CDP, which is, will you be issuing a scoring guideline as reference for the 2013 supply chain report? I suspect you mean the 2013 supply disclosure process. And all of our scoring methodology and the information around the scoring system is actually published on our website. We have a support section on the website and quite a lot of detailed documentation on the website around the scoring methodology. We've also integrated elements of the scoring methodology into the guidance document that supports the questionnaire. So as you use the online questionnaire to respond to CDP, you can click through to the guidance section and see the appropriate part of the guide section for your questions that you're answering and the scoring methodology for those questions. I think there was a quick question for you. I think it put you on the spot a bit. There was one of your suppliers asking when the next training session is for suppliers.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I was very pleased to hear that. In fact, the trainings that we had organized were internal trainings for our sourcing teams. So far, we hadn't thought about organizing trainings for our suppliers, but it might be a good idea. And in our case, we are always happy to share. So, Dexter, you can give my email address to our suppliers, and we will be happy to organize whatever kind of web conference or meeting that the suppliers to move further.
Thank you very much, and I know that L'Oréal are very supportive of their suppliers in this space. So, as our members, very responsive to requests from suppliers. So please do let us know if you have any further questions. Unfortunately, we haven't had time to get to all of the questions in the chat box today, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank Bank of America, our report writers, Accenture, and of course our scoring partners, FCS. Thank you very much for this great support, and to 2 Degrees for hosting these webinars. If you have any further queries or questions, you can feel free to contact me or anybody on my team at CDP Supply Chain. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks everyone for joining. As I said up there, the recording will be made available on our website soon. You'll be receiving an email with all of the relevant links and information. Thanks to all our presenters today for joining us, and to you attendees as well. Have a wonderful day.